Welcome to the segment we like to call Heart to Heart Talks. And Heart to Heart Talks, ironically, LJ, I know both of us have an NUS story. Mine is when I was at NUS for a brief summer, and we were there with students from the National University of Singapore on exchange. And we spent the whole time, late nights, conversations in each other's residence rooms, talking heart to heart about key issues that are affecting us right now. So I thought right now would be a perfect time to bring in the segment and talk about an issue that I know is very, very dear to all three of us and is very also important and timely because of what's going on in Vancouver right now. Of course, all across Canada as well. My question, and maybe LJ and Jonah, you can have a conversation about this briefly, and I'll listen, because I think for individuals like myself, Chinese, not Filipino, listening is what I need to do, and what I think that the public needs to do to the community. How do we give the proper flowers and proper due to the Filipino diasporic community so that they can build political power here? And in BC, we've seen a lack of this, frankly, from the way Mabel Elmore, who is an MLA, is getting the short end of the stick politically, to now we're seeing the food and cultural assets at Joyce Collingwood, a very, very important neighborhood for the Filipino community, amazing restaurants that's a center and hub being replaced possibly by a new development. Yet we still have so many amazing community advocates. And LJ, I wish you were here in Vancouver. And Jonah, I don't know if you know some of these names, but individuals like RJ Aquino, Justine Ramirez. I told my brother Rene John Nicholas that I would be giving him a shout as well. People I deeply admire, pushing change in the community. But how do we make this happen? And what do you think the community can do, both locally but also nationally in Canada? Big question.
Very big. Go, Jonah.
I would prefer for you, LJ, to kick this off. I think it's a big question, so I'll think about this one.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really I think, Will, you hit the nail on the head. That's a really good question, and it's a really big problem. Whether you're coming in from organizations, whether you're coming in from just as a newcomer, an individual in Canada, as new Canadian, Filipino, Filipinx Canadian, however you identify, it's a question of visibility. First of all, I've talked to people in various organizations, whether inside the profession of law, outside as a journalist. Yes, I used to be a journalist too. It's a question of visibility and knowing who to identify, finding the role models. Not saying that the previous generations, the community is not lacking for role models and leaders. It's a matter of exposure. So I was really happy, and I think it was you, Will, who tagged me when Omni News Filipino was launched. Mm-hmm. That to me was a very important watershed moment. We don't have enough representation, enough visibility, I would say. But in my past decade of being in Canada, I want to say that the presence, visibility of Filipino Canadians across the board has been steadily growing. And it's exciting, but at the same time, there's a lot of work to be done. In terms of showcasing leadership. I just found this out yesterday that apparently there has not been a Filipino Canadian who sat in the House of Commons for 17 years in Canada, which is very, very puzzling for a population, if you count per Statistics Canada, about 900,000 Filipino Canadians, or 900,000 Canadians call the Philippines their home, or they have some sort of connection to the Philippines. So there is this group in Toronto, mainly Ottawa based, that they're trying to essentially encourage people. They encourage the political parties essentially to, ramp up on representation essentially when we're talking about this particular diaspora community. And you're right, Will, to highlight some of these talents and some of these leaders. Like Justine, I know I've interacted with her a couple of times. She's awesome. It's just that they're never given the light of day, unfortunately. And you're right. I think your words were very much telling, being given the short end of the stick. But we've had very important contributors in Canadian society, from the Filipino Canadian community, such as Senator Enverga, the late Senator Enverga, the last person who actually sat in Parliament. Unfortunately passed away. So there currently is no representation for Filipino Canadians in Parliament, which I think is a very big problem. And hopefully that's something that will change sooner rather than later. Johna?
That's great. I'm learning a lot from just what you said. And I think one thing I can say as a newcomer to Canada, I've been here for 2 years, and as a journalist, I think um, there are so many different kinds of Filipinos. I say this personally because I'm very cognizant that I am Filipino. And I also grew up in Hong Kong. Um, but then my partner, for example, he is Filipino. He also grew up in Hong Kong, but he spent a lot more time in Canada. And we've had these conversations where we ask ourselves, are we, should we take up space, or what do we have to say around this? Because our experiences as Filipinos are very different compared to a Filipino Canadian who grew up here, and a Filipino who immigrated from the Philippines coming here. And I think what I'm learning is that it's okay. You can take up the space you do own, and I think um, I think the hesitation is fair, and the apprehension, like, can I, who am I to talk about Filipino issues? First of all, because of A, B, C, D, and E. But who am I not either? And I think that's true for Filipinos anywhere. Half Filipinos, quarter Filipinos. I think that's true where you grew up in. And so I think my answer really is to take up the space you do own. You can be transparent about it. You don't have to pretend to be what you're not, but do take that space, especially if it's a platform, or if it's, if it carries any form of influence whatsoever. And I think, as someone in media, I used to be a lifestyle writer. I used to write about food and design. And so lifestyle, for better or worse, is still something I'm very interested in. Like, what is the beauty routine of a Filipino someone, celebrity or not a celebrity, or where do Filipino brands? I think what I'm trying to say is representation, not just in the very common or very stereotypical stories we find Filipinos in. Again, those stories are important. We should keep reporting those stories, but it would be really good to see more coverage as well, not just for Filipinos as well, but for racialized communities, like coverage in other aspects and facets of their own lives. Like, yeah, so that's how that's one way I think we can own the power that we do have.
I love how it circles back to humanizing the stories of racialized communities. What do you
Yeah.
think, Will?
Absolutely. I just realized sometimes all your feel good stories that sometimes the news fills out almost disproportionately involve white people, frankly, and sometimes we have these stories, traditions, customs, and even like how the community works behind the scenes that maybe parts of us want to keep some of this behind the scenes for reasons of privacy, reasons of maintenance, to not have it affected. But when you bring that to the forefront and see what's going on, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, one of the things that for me, and again, I don't want to make it sound like I'm sort of an outsider just commenting and from any sort of position, but when the community comes together and shares resources, especially around food, and I see it on Facebook, I see it in when there's something good, like someone found this like amazing thing and now they're selling this fruit, and then they post it up, all the homies start jumping in and like order me one, and people who don't know each other from very different cities in the Philippines suddenly connect over language, over food, in ways that sometimes I wish in my community we could do, but it's been so fractured recently that it's been tough to do so. So you have an asset there of connectivity, and hopefully that asset is worked to leverage that power that the community will get it to do. So it was an awesome conversation. Thanks for.
That's a nice way to end that segment, Will. So I guess we want to segue into the light-em round segment, don't we?
I don't need the lightning round. The favorite section, we have to say, of
Yes.
Johna. So welcome to the light-em round. Also known as Jonah's favorite section, also known as it's almost dinner time in Vancouver and we need to eat.
That's right.